Don't you dare touch my kid, you fake parent.
Bob came to our house with Kate after their child was born. When Kate left the room momentarily, the baby started crying, perhaps feeling uneasy without their mom. However, Bob didn't make any effort to soothe the baby. The moment I couldn't stand it anymore and tried to pick up the baby, Bob raised his voice and stopped me. He hurled shocking words at me, and the two of us started arguing. Just then, Kate returned to the room and was stunned by what she saw.
Don't you know?
She revealed a shocking truth about something Bob had done. My name is Amy Watson. I'm a 47-year-old pianist. I have a son named Bob. It's been 19 years since he became part of my family. My life has been full of ups and downs. Bob is not my biological son. When he was 3 years old, I remarried his biological father. In other words, Bob is my husband's child from a previous marriage. Apparently, his previous wife left Bob and walked out on them. When there's a stepchild involved, legal adoption is necessary to officially recognize the child as your own. When I decided to remarry, I made up my mind to be Bob's mother. So shortly after getting married, I officially adopted Bob. I was thrilled, thinking that the three of us, my husband, Bob, and I, had become a real family. But my husband started cheating on me shortly after we got married and eventually divorced me. To avoid parenting, he dumped Bob on me and ran away.
I can't raise a kid. I'll pay money. So please, I'm begging you.
With those words, he ran off to his mistress's house and refused even to visit. I tried confronting him multiple times and explained the situation to his mistress, but I was threatened with the police and turned away. Even when I turned to my in-laws for help, they treated me the same way. I was at my wit's end. Everyone just passed Bob around like he was someone else's problem. Desperate, I considered placing Bob in foster care. But seeing him cling to me, crying and refusing to let go, I couldn't abandon him. Even though only a year had passed since I married his father, Bob, at that time, was honest and pure. He had never been properly loved by his biological parents. So he probably saw me, the person taking care of him, as someone he could trust. He grew very attached to me as I dedicated myself wholeheartedly to raising him. Because of that, I decided to raise him. I settled things with my ex-husband, making him pay alimony and child support as a condition of the divorce. From then on, I vowed to protect Bob and dedicated myself to parenting. But when Bob was in high school, he came across a photo album in my room and discovered that I wasn't his biological mother. Learning that his father had abandoned him, Bob became rebellious and started lashing out at me. Whenever something upset him, he threw things at me and even destroyed walls during particularly bad outbursts. I'm sure he couldn't forgive me for keeping it a secret for so long. Whenever he acted out, he hurled insults at me. "Please, Bob, stop it. You're going to destroy the house."
Shut up. You're not even my real mom, so stop acting all high and mighty.
By then, Bob had grown stronger, and I couldn't stop him. He destroyed everything in the living room.
You're not my real parent, so why should I listen to you? Stop trying to control me.
Leaving those cruel words behind, he stormed off to his room. After that, Bob stopped going to school and began hanging out with delinquents. He rarely came home, and I was at a loss. I thought it might be the end. The one who saved me was Kate, Bob's childhood friend. Kate had been a student at my piano school and was also Bob's girlfriend. She was such a wonderful girl, far too good for Bob. She repeatedly persuaded him to change his ways. Thanks to Kate, Bob turned his life around and started going back to school. He managed to graduate from high school and got a job at a factory. Eventually, he and Kate got married. But things between Bob and me remain the same. He still won't even speak to me properly.
I'm only staying with you out of respect for her. Honestly, I don't even want to see your face.
That's all he says, keeping his cold attitude toward me. Kate has tried to convince him time and again, but this is something he just can't compromise on. His attitude never changes when it's just the two of us.
How long is Bob planning to keep up that behavior? He's an adult now, a working man. It's time he grew up and changed his attitude.
Thank you, Kate. Even before you two got married, I've caused you so much trouble, and now, even after your marriage, I'm still being a burden. I'm really sorry.
Please, don't worry about it. My parents and I know how much you've gone through, Amy. And honestly, I love playing the piano because of you. This isn't even close to paying you back for everything you've done for me.
Kate's warm smile as she says this brings comfort to my heart.
Hey, Amy, can I see that piano again today?
Of course. Kate's favorite is the crystal piano in my practice room. I had used it only once during a concert in New York, but Kate happened to see that performance during a school event when she was in elementary school. Since then, she's been absolutely in love with the crystal piano. Whenever she peeked at it, it seemed to boost her motivation to practice.
One day, I'd love to let the kids hear the sound of that piano.
Well then, when you become a preschool teacher, I'll come and do a concert at your school.
Really?
Kate's dream is to become a preschool teacher. She's currently in college, with just a little more to go before graduation. She's on the path to achieving her dream. But then, during this exciting time, Kate discovered she was pregnant. By the time she realized, she was already over 22 weeks along, so both she and Bob decided to go forward with having the baby. Once she was in the second trimester, the two of them got married. From that point on, life became a whirlwind. Between preparing baby items, attending checkbus, and completing paperwork, time flew by, and before we knew it, the baby was born. And today, I'm going to meet my grandchild for the first time. I couldn't visit while they were in the hospital, not wanting to impose, but Kate called me after being discharged, saying they were coming over with the baby. Since then, things between Bob and me haven't been perfect, but we've maintained a reasonable distance. I couldn't stop being excited because Bob would be with them. He still doesn't talk to me, but at least he no longer hurls insults at me every time we meet. I guess he's matured in his own way. Reality, however, isn't so simple. As I finished getting everything ready to welcome them, the doorbell rang. Feeling a mix of excitement and nerves, I headed to the door. Welcome. When I slowly opened the door and looked up, there was Kate, holding a tiny baby girl wrapped in a swaddle with a look of pure love on her face.
Thank you for having us.
Kate's expression, now that she's become a mother, seemed gentler and more maternal than ever. Since Bob was parking the car, I led Kate and the baby into the living room first. Congratulations on the baby. It must have been tough, right? Here's a little gift, some baby clothes. I didn't know the gender, so I picked something neutral with a watermelon design.
Oh wow, so cute. It's perfect for summer. Hey baby, this is from Grandma Amy.
Since becoming pregnant, Kate started calling me Grandma Amy. Apparently, she wanted her child to remember my name. So instead of calling me Grandma, she thought a nickname would be better. It was such a thoughtful gesture.
Sorry to keep you waiting.
Bob walked in a little later, and for some reason, he sat right between Kate and me, almost as if to shield the baby from me. Hey, if you sit there, I can't see her cute little face.
It's fine. I want to sit here.
While things had improved a bit, our relationship still wasn't fully mended. With Kate around, his behavior was slightly better than usual. But the moment I tried to peek at the baby, Bob shot me a sharp look. Then Kate left the room to take a call from her family. Perhaps sensing her mother's absence, the baby began to cry. Thinking she might need a bottle, I turned to ask Bob, but he was busy on his phone and showed no intention of helping. When I decided to pick up the baby myself, that's when it happened.
Don't touch her.
Bob shouted loudly, grabbing the baby out of my reach.
Don't let a fake parent touch my kid. I only let you see her because Kate asked me to, so don't get ahead of yourself.
Even though his newborn daughter was right there, Bob didn't hold back his harsh words. Stunned and shocked, I couldn't even respond.
I really didn't want to show my kid's face to you, but since we had errands nearby, I figured we might as well stop by. If you thought you'd get to hold her, you're dead wrong.
Since their marriage, Bob and Kate moved into their new home together, rarely coming back to visit. I thought that distance was working well for both of us. But clearly, I was the only one who felt that way. For Bob, nothing had changed since the day he learned the truth. The resentment he felt toward me for staying silent was as strong as ever. That bitterness was obvious in the air between us. As that tense atmosphere lingered, Bob's phone started ringing. The moment he saw the caller ID, his expression changed. Still holding the baby, he headed straight for my practice room. What could he need in there? Curious, I followed him and saw him staring at the crystal piano while speaking into his phone in a suspicious tone.
Yes, the company name is engraved on it. If this really is the crystal piano, you better pay a hefty price, all right? So, the company name is...
Company name, engraved in money. The moment I heard those words, the blood drained from my face. I rushed into the room, and Bob glared at me in annoyance.
What's your problem? Can't you see I'm on the phone?
Realizing he might have been caught, Bob quickly stepped away from the piano and started yelling at me instead. But I didn't back down. What are you trying to do with that piano? He went out of his way to confirm the company name and made remarks hinting at money. It was immediately clear to me that Bob was trying to sell the piano, but I couldn't let that happen. I stepped between him and the piano, shielding it behind me.
What's the big deal? Someone told me it's a rare piano, so I was just checking its value. That's it.
Bob, trying to sound nonchalant, adopted a casual tone he rarely used, likely in an attempt to defuse the situation. But it only irritated me further, and I couldn't hide my frustration. That piano is more important to me than my life. If you're trying to sell it, I won't allow it. What gives you the right to do something like that? It's completely out of line. There was no way I could believe him after overhearing that phone call. Without hesitation, I grabbed his phone and ended the call. An angry Bob glared at me and shouted so loudly that his voice echoed through the room.
What the hell are you doing, old lady? Bob shouted, his voice echoing through the room.
The baby, who had calmed down for a moment, started crying loudly again. Don't you dare sell that piano. It's mine. What makes you think you can decide something like that?
Shut up. Once you kick the bucket, all your stuff will be mine anyway, right? So what does it matter if I decide what to do with something that's gonna be mine eventually?
Bob snatched his phone back roughly. As his adoptive mother, I knew he had legal rights to inherit my estate. But I never intended for him to sell the piano. In fact, I had planned to donate it to the city after my death, so it could be properly cherished. That's why I couldn't forgive what Bob was trying to do. Selling that piano, something I had cherished like my own child, without my permission was unthinkable. The argument continued for a while. I tried to make him understand how cruel his actions were, but my words only seemed to fuel his anger even more. Suddenly, Bob began raging in the room, throwing everything on the walls and shelves.
Don't you dare tell me what to do, old hag. What's the point of all this junk? I'm the one trying to put it to good use, and you're the one acting all high and mighty.
I tried desperately to stop him, fearing for my grandchild's safety as I held her tightly. But he's an adult man. There was no way my strength could match his, and my competition trophies and certificates were smashed onto the floor one after another. Bob, stop, please. I'm begging you, stop it. The baby, still in my arms, cried endlessly, likely out of sheer terror. The house had turned into a scene straight out of a nightmare. Somebody help. That's when it happened. With a sharp cracking sound, both Bob and I froze in place. When I turned to see what had happened, I realized one of the trophies Bob had thrown had hit the crystal piano. A crack had formed where it struck, and part of the piano was chipped. At that moment, something inside me snapped. Hearing the commotion, Kate came rushing in and was left speechless by the devastation.
I heard loud noises even from outside, but what happened here?
Mom grabbed my phone and started yelling at me, so I got mad, okay? But it's no big deal. It's just a chip. A repair shop can fix it in no time.
Clearly flustered by Kate's presence, Bob quickly adopted a cheerful tone and walked over to me. Placing a hand firmly on my shoulder, he applied silent pressure, as if warning me not to say anything unnecessary. But I kept my head down and didn't respond. Normally, I'd try to accommodate Bob's words, but I couldn't bring myself to do it this time. Noticing my silence, Bob tilted his head in confusion, while Kate dropped her phone to the floor and covered her mouth with both hands.
No, this can't be real.
Her voice trembled with disbelief as she began to shake. Seeing her unusual reaction, Bob turned to her, puzzled. Kate's expression shifted as she grabbed Bob by the collar and raised her voice in anger.
Don't you know? This piano is one of only 5 crystal pianos in the entire world. It's not something that can be repaired so easily.
What?
Bob let out a surprised shout. And understandably so. Most crystal pianos are made from acrylic resin, but this piano was different. It was made from genuine crystal by a renowned manufacturer who had custom built it for me. The crack meant a part of the crystal had chipped. No craftsman in the country could repair it, and the only option was to contact the original manufacturer in China and request repairs. This piano was exceptionally rare. The company president had been so moved by my performance that they made it for me as a token of gratitude, asking me to share its beauty with the world. This wasn't something that could be casually fixed by calling a repairman. Hearing about its value from Kate, Bob turned pale. Then Kate dropped another bombshell.
And do you even know how much this piano is worth? $3 million. Repairs aren't going to cost just a few bucks.
$3 million?
The staggering amount left Bob in shock. He glanced at me for confirmation, but I didn't even look at him. I simply walked over to the crystal piano, picked up the broken piece, and said nothing.
Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't know it was worth that much.
Realizing the gravity of the situation, Bob finally began to understand. He peeked at my face, trying to gauge my mood. But I replied with only 2 words. It's fine. He had destroyed not just the piano I cherished like a child, but also the trophies and certificates I had worked so hard for. Something inside me had broken. I lifted my head, looked at Bob, and said something that shocked him. It's fine. You don't need to apologize. Bob took those words at face value and let out a sigh of relief, patting his chest as if a weight had been lifted. He likely misunderstood, thinking his apology had been accepted and that all was forgiven. With a smile of relief, he began to speak again.
So you're forgiving me. Thank you, Mom.
I'll be sending you the repair bill, and I'm cutting all ties with you. So no need to apologize.
What?
I interrupted him, my words cutting like a knife. Bob hadn't expected me to talk about cutting ties or charging him for the repairs. His face went pale, and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead.
You're joking, right? It's just a little chip. You don't have to go that far.
I've been thinking about this for a long time. I was wondering if things could stay as they were. But it's also true that I hurt you by keeping the truth from you. That's on me. I thought I had to endure everything as my responsibility for hurting you. For decades, I've endured it all. No matter what happened, I gritted my teeth and waited, hoping that one day Bob would understand. I thought that having a child might change Bob's perspective. Maybe, just maybe, this baby would help repair our relationship as parent and child. I had such hopes. But reality couldn't have been further from that. Instead, the things I cherished deeply were left in ruins. Why should I have to endure any more of this? To make matters worse, he had even tried to sell my precious piano. I didn't want to leave any inheritance rights to someone like that. When I told Bob my decision to cut him off, he panicked and started trying to appease me again.
Don't say that. We just had a baby, and if you cut ties with me, it means you won't be able to see your grandchild easily. Are you really okay with that?
His voice wavered with anxiety as he tried to use my grandchild as leverage. But I wouldn't give in to such threats. Crossing my arms, I stood firm and stated my opinion clearly. I don't mind. Kate will keep me updated, and I'm only cutting ties with you. This has nothing to do with Kate or the baby.
It's not unrelated. This baby is my child, and Kate is my wife. If you cut ties with me, that means cutting ties with both of them too.
No, it doesn't.
Kate immediately shut down Bob's frantic attempt at further threats. She took the baby from him, holding her protectively, and glared at him with disdain.
The only thing ending is your relationship with Amy. It has nothing to do with me or this baby. Legally, there's no rule saying Amy can't see us, so of course, she'll still be able to. What nonsense are you even talking about?
Bob clearly hadn't expected Kate to side with me. Her support left him stunned. Meanwhile, the baby, now in her mother's arms, seemed reassured and stopped crying, falling into a peaceful sleep.
You're abandoning me?
You have a newborn baby, yet you can't even take proper care of her. You've wrecked this room, and you can't even respect other people's cherished belongings. Who in their right mind would stand by someone like that? It's unthinkable.
Kate delivered her harsh truths without hesitation, and her sharp words were refreshing to hear.
Amy is as good as a real mother to me. Any husband who can't respect someone so important to me isn't someone I or this baby need in our lives. I have more than enough reason to leave you.
It must have been the first time Bob had heard something so harsh. Hearing Kate's words, Bob was overcome with despair. He could only look at her miserably, showing no sign of rebuttal. Seizing the moment, I added to what she had said. By the way, don't think the repair bill is just for the piano. I'll be charging you for everything you broke in this room. Hearing the word bill, Bob seemed to snap out of his stupor and turned to face me.
But if you do that, it'll make life hard for Kate and my baby. Are you okay with that?
I was astonished that he still assumed he would continue living with Kate and the baby. Kate, who had been listening silently, was equally shocked, her mouth slightly agape in disbelief.
You say this is about punishing me, but if you demand money for repairs, it'll make things hard for Kate too. Are you really okay with that? You care about Kate and the baby, don't you?
Hearing his attempt at manipulation, I couldn't help but sigh. He must have thought I would back down, but that wasn't going to happen. Before I could respond, Kate stepped in.
Don't decide for us that we'll struggle. I'm divorcing you. We'll be just fine without you.
What?
Bob was visibly shaken by Kate's declaration of divorce. Even as I listened, I couldn't help but be exasperated that he hadn't seen it coming.
Divorce? What are you talking about? We just had a baby. It's supposed to be the start of our family. How can we not work together as a couple?
Do you really think a man who still throws tantrums and breaks things even after having a child is needed as a father?
Bob desperately tried to convince her, throwing out arguments one after another. But Kate shot them all down with ease, her words cutting deeper each time. His face grew paler as he realized there was no escape. No matter what he said, he was met with rebuttals, both from Kate and me. He must have finally realized he wasn't needed anymore, as he suddenly began to unravel.
You've spent all this time blaming Amy for keeping secrets and throwing tantrums in this house. Do you even know how old you are? You're not a child anymore. You should know better. And yet, you still behave like this. Who would want someone like that around? We're better off without you.
Faced with the harsh truth, Bob shook his head in denial, as if trying to reject reality.
It's unthinkable as a human being. I can't imagine what it would be like to have my own child treat me this way. So, this is the end. We're done. I'm divorcing you.
Kate glared at Bob with a firm resolve. It was clear he had never expected things to escalate this far. Bob began apologizing profusely, pleading with Kate to reconsider, but his words fell on deaf ears.
No, I don't want a divorce. I don't want to lose Kate.
That's impossible, isn't it? You still act like this even toward the parent who raised you. Who could ever trust you to take care of a child? You're neither reliable nor trustworthy. There's no point in staying married to someone like that.
Her words were entirely justified. However, Bob had never been spoken to so coldly by Kate before, and the shock left him completely drained. He hung his head, speechless, as if he couldn't find anything to say.
It's a good thing I found out who you really are before this child grew up. I thought you'd matured now that you're an adult, but I've realized that people don't change so easily. You've proved that to me.
At that moment, I noticed Kate's face contorting with visible pain. She must have placed her faith in Bob as well. She hoped that having a child would make him value his family. She had placed her last hopes on him, believing he could become a great father. But instead, he betrayed her completely and even destroyed things that others cherished deeply. The one truly hurt here was Kate. Thinking about how she must feel made my chest ache. Unaware of any of this, Bob remained silent. Kate, unable to stand it, asked him directly,
Why did you act out like this?
Well,
Bob averted his eyes awkwardly. There was no way he could admit that he was lashing out because he got caught trying to sell the piano and was scolded for it. But Kate wasn't about to let him off the hook. She threatened to tell their friends about what he'd done if he didn't speak up, and Bob finally confessed that he had tried to sell the piano. The moment Kate heard this, she gave a chilling smile and covered their baby's ears with both hands. Then she turned to me and kindly asked, "Could you cover your ears for a moment?" What was she planning to do? Curious, I watched her closely. Kate took a deep breath and then yelled at Bob with a voice so loud it made even me flinch.
I thought you said you paid off your debt.
Bob let out a small yelp and fell to the ground, cowering in fear. Even I, standing nearby, was taken aback by the intensity of her voice and the force of her anger.
You told me, didn't you? When I was pregnant, you said you'd made some stupid gambling debts, but it was fine because you'd already paid them off. That's why we got married, isn't it?
What? To my shock, I learned that Bob had racked up $60,000 in debt right before marrying Kate. He had lost big in horse racing and kept gambling to recover the losses, only to dig himself deeper into debt. Bob knew he couldn't marry Kate until the debt was paid off. So he lied about having paid it back and planned to sell my piano to settle the debt. Learning this, I felt my entire body tremble with anger as I turned a stern gaze toward Bob.
No, I wasn't really trying to sell it. I was just curious about how much it was worth, so I looked into it. That's all. I wasn't seriously planning to sell it to pay off debt or anything.
Bob forced a nervous laugh, trying to talk his way out of it. Fed up, I demanded proof. Then show me the receipt. Prove you paid it off.
What?
If you really paid off the debt, you'd have a receipt to prove it. Show it to me.
Well, I didn't get a receipt, so I can't really prove it.
Bob mumbled in a small voice, avoiding eye contact as his gaze darted around. His pathetic demeanor only fueled my anger, and I felt a vain pulse in my temple. That's ridiculous. Stop lying and trying to worm your way out of this.
Oh no.
Startled by my yelling, something I rarely did, Bob let out a pitiful scream. The more he spoke, the angrier I became. Though I hadn't intended to hold it over him, Bob had repaid my kindness with betrayal. There was no way I could forgive him now. I've decided I won't consider you my son anymore.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
Ignoring his question, I took out my phone and immediately contacted a lawyer I knew. Oh, you can come right away. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Who are you calling?
A lawyer I know. He'll be here soon, and we'll settle this with his help. Hearing the word lawyer, Bob's lips trembled. He must have realized what was about to happen. Desperately, he clung to my legs, sobbing and begging for forgiveness.
Mom, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I won't sell it, and even if it takes my whole life, I'll pay back the repair costs. Please, don't talk about dissolving the adoption.
No matter how much Bob cried or shouted, I had no intention of forgiving him. Having finally resolved to cut ties with him, I calmly spoke without hesitation. It's helpful that you understand so quickly. If you're so perceptive, maybe you should have thought about the consequences before acting this time. What a shame. Bob crawled to my feet, clinging to me while bawling his eyes out. His pitiful and wretched appearance didn't even stir a trace of sympathy in me. Though I tried to pry him off, his strength overpowered mine. Annoyed, I sighed and uttered the coldest words I had ever spoken to him. Let go.
No, I won't let go until you forgive me.
Let me go. My tone shifted sharply, startling Bob. He flinched, looked up at me fearfully, and then, intimidated by my icy gaze, released his grip on my legs. No matter how much you apologize or grovel, I won't forgive you. Spending your life paying for what you've done is the bare minimum. It's so basic that it doesn't even count as a condition.
No way.
Nothing you do will make a difference. Faced with the harsh reality that nothing he did would make a difference, Bob was at a loss for words. I crouched down to meet his eyes and stared at him. Do you now understand, even a little, how it felt when I apologized over and over and still wasn't forgiven? Bob probably thought that if he nodded and agreed, I might forgive him and not dissolve the adoption. His tear-streaked face lit up with hope, and he nodded enthusiastically.
I understand. I really do. I realize now how terrible I've been and I'll make up for it from now on, so please.
Then do me a favor and don't show me your face again.
What?
Bob's voice cracked as he stared at me in disbelief. To drive the point home, I continued, delivering another blow. Honestly, I don't even want to see your face anymore. The idea of people knowing that such a pathetic person is my son disgusts me. That's why I'm dissolving the adoption. Take care of your debts on your own.
No way.
It was over. Bob realized it too, collapsing to the floor in defeat. Not long after, the lawyer arrived. After that, Kate and I, with the lawyer present, discussed the future with Bob at my home. However, Bob refused both the divorce and the dissolution of the adoption. He started throwing another tantrum, making it impossible to continue the discussion, so we had no choice but to call the police. Bob was arrested for property damage. Not wanting to deal with him anymore, Kate and I entrusted the rest to the lawyer. When the lawyer explained that if Bob refused divorce and dissolution, the matter would proceed to court, Bob, unable to afford the legal fees, finally gave in. He agreed to our demands. In addition to the property damage and the harassment he inflicted on me, we sued Bob for millions of dollars in damages. Since then, Kate has been working as a pianist at my studio. Being a single mother and raising a child is no easy task. So I suggested she teach piano to the children at my studio while taking care of her child there. We've even performed together at concerts. The children who came to watch our performances were captivated by the crystal piano, just as Kate had been when she was a child, and many of them joined my studio. One day, Kate and I performed a duet on the crystal piano at a concert. Our perfect synchronization caught the audience's attention, and the performance was featured in the local newspaper. From there, our studio gradually gained recognition, and now many children come to learn piano with us. After the incident, I tearfully apologized to the company president who had made the crystal piano. To my surprise, he immediately came to the U.S. with repair specialists. Within a week, the piano was fully restored. In exchange, he asked me to perform in China, waiving the repair fees if I agreed to a free performance. Moved by his generosity, I'm taking Kate and my grandchild to China next month. As we laugh and plan the trip, we talk about how we'll record the performance to share the beauty of the piano with my grandchild someday.